Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, as Vicky's just said, I'm Simon Hanson. I'm the Economic Development and Policy Manager at NEPO, and I'll take us through how we're helping to tackle the climate emergency through our North East social value model. So over the next sort of 10 minutes or so, I'll cover out who we are, the North East social value model, the environmental focus that we've had, what we've delivered already and where we're heading to, some of the national procurement reforms that have been announced just within the past month and how that plays into this broader sustainability and environmental agenda. And then I'll finish off with a couple of case studies, one from a council and one from the NHS, just to show the depth of how seriously the public sector across the North East are taking the climate emergency. So the who we are, I'll be very quick with this one. We were established in 1976, and as it says there, we deliver an ambitious collaborative procurement work programme with the 12 North East local authorities. Our solutions and frameworks are used by over 700 associate members from across the wider UK public sector, and it ranges from everything through energy, which is zero carbon, right through to court services, right through to professional services. And we've got a core team of about 30 employees. As a relatively new member of staff, I've met everybody on Teams, but I haven't met everybody physically from NEPO yet. So I'll say we're a superb team without sort of having met them all. So just to give a bit of background in terms of our North East social value model. So we embed social value in everything that we do in terms of our procurement. And over the next sort of 3 years, our social value model is going to focus on these core 6 things. Now, I'm not going to touch on them all, but really it's that number 4, 5 and 6, where we've recognized the impact that the environment, our businesses processes create and have the impact that it has on the environment, and that we want to position our social value work as an intrinsic part of that wider sustainability agenda. So yeah, so we're over the past couple of years, we've embedded it in everything that we've done through 2018 through 2020. And as I say, up to 2023, we'll be focusing on these key areas. But as Vicky has already outlined, we are absolutely cognizant of the impact that this is going to have on suppliers from across the North East. So again, just to give a flavour of that, we've got about 156,000 private sector businesses in the North East, of which about 102,000 are sole traders. So again, we recognise the impact that shifting to greener procurement can have and the support that we're able to offer those suppliers and being able to deliver on those ambitions. So our environmental focus over the past 2 months, we've engaged with the local authorities to see what are the biggest priorities that you have in terms of procurement over the next 12 months as part of our broader North East social value model. Number 1 was obviously addressing the local economic recovery, but the second biggest priority for all 12 was to address the environmental challenges that we have in the North East. So as has already been said, a number of all councils have declared a climate emergency. The timescales with which they've got to deliver that ranges right through from 2035 up to 2050. So within our new model, what we wanted to do was to provide that leadership and certainty to everybody, both for buyers so that they would understand the priorities that we have, but also to the suppliers, so that if you were looking to supply any of the 12 local authorities, you would see the same number of measures being used in terms of that environmental, from that environmental aspect. And some of those that we are using is to reduce single-use plastic use, to minimise the car miles that are being used, but also to reduce climate emissions. And what we've done by reducing those to that number of measures is, as I say, to say to the marketplace, this is what you're going to see, and it'll be included for the next 12 months at least. After that, we'll go back out and consult and ask, are these the same priorities that we have now over the next 12 months? Again, being mindful that we've just come through a very tricky 12 to 18 months with the impact that COVID's had. And we're not just going to include these measures for the sake of including them either. We're going to be able to demonstrate that it'll help us deliver economic growth. It'll help us to help communities and achieve real impact for local communities, but also to achieve our broader net zero ambition. But what we're not going to do from a NEPO perspective either is just to passively wait for that direction. That we do want to be able to be market shaping as well as market sort of influencing. We want to be able to say to suppliers, this is where we expect you to be, and this is how we'll help you to get to where we want to be in amongst that broader North East mission. Most importantly, or just as importantly, we want to be able to celebrate the successes that we've all had as well. A lot of times when we're doing this sort of work, we do a lot of the work in terms of the foundations of the model that we're going to use, how we put it into our frameworks or into our tender opportunities, but then we never celebrate the successes that local suppliers have been able to deliver to encourage further local suppliers, that this isn't as tricky as it sounds, that we can demystify it, but also to demonstrate from a Northeast perspective that, again, that the Northeast is not a problem to be solved, that we are a solution to some of these challenges from right across the UK as well. So again, it's to be able to showcase that and to be able to say to suppliers, now that you've been able to demonstrate that in the Northeast, there is no sort of barriers to you to be able to supply local authorities or the wider public sector up and down the country. So in terms of what we have delivered already, and again, this was in our pilot projects, you can see there that this is just from a NEPO perspective in terms of our framework agreements that we've pulled together, that we've been able to deliver a reduction in car miles saved, and we've also been able to help in terms of boosting that green infrastructure. What you won't see in there is the climate emissions that we've been able to secure, because we're in that tricky period now of just working out just how much those climate emissions that we have been able to secure. But again, we're being very cognizant that given that we've had the challenges of COVID-19 over the past year, that the figure that we have for this year or the past year will be totally different from the year previous, just because everybody's been working from home or had to be very flexible in the way that we deliver. But we wanted to be able to show just what we have delivered and just what the art of the possible is within the sort of national TOMS framework that a lot of the public sector use to demonstrate the social value. The national procurement reforms, which I touched on at the outset, are broadly these two PPN notices that the government or the Cabinet Office released just this month. So the first one on the left-hand side there, the National Procurement Policy Statement. As you can see there in paragraph 6, it does outline that all contracting authorities should consider tackling climate change and reducing waste as one of the top 3 priorities for all public procurement over the coming months and years. This also will form part of the procurement bill, which was announced in the Queen's speech, which is due to come to Parliament in September this year. So there's no doubt that this focus on how we achieve that broader net zero target and net zero ambitions isn't going away, and we are starting to see that influence come through in terms of procurement. That was quickly followed up in June with a second procurement notice, which was around the carbon reduction plans in the procurement of major government contracts. That it comes into force, if you like, in September this year. And what it says is that for any government contract worth over £5 million, suppliers have to have a carbon reduction plan, which outlines how they will achieve net zero by 2050 at the latest. So again, we're starting to see this influence of getting at that market shape, and that national government is saying, we're not going to have suppliers unless you're able to achieve our broader net zero ambitions. Now, what we're thinking about in the Northeast is how does that impact on our supplies? But again, as was outlined in the presentation earlier, how that flows right through the supply chain. So if you've got a tier 1 supplier who has to meet these commitments, there's no doubt that that will flow through the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers as well to be able to help them achieve their broader targets within all of this. The one exclusion that we do have from PPN 0621 is those new businesses. If you're under 12 months old, businesses have only got to say, yes, we're at the start of being able to pull together a carbon reduction plan, but we're not expecting, they're not expecting them to have outlined it in total detail as to what impact it is, etc. But even then, after that 12 months is up, there will be an expectation that the level of support and the plan will be a lot more stringent and targeted than it would be in the first few months. So I'll just finish off with a couple of case studies. As I said, again, at the beginning, I would talk about a county council and also the NHS. So Durham County Council have really embraced the social value work and the environmental aspects within that, and they've created their own set of Durham TOMS, themes, outcomes and measures, to address those environmental challenges, including that reduction of CO2 emissions and eliminating single-use plastics. And what they're really keen to do is to look to support local businesses to deliver. And there's been a couple of examples that they've used recently, where Esh Group, which is a construction firm, helped to build a new school in the county, and they were able to extract from that a heck of a lot of social value, including that the environmental aspect, but also being able to keep that local supply chain in business, but also to support local suppliers. So again, reducing the impact of having a wide range of suppliers, again, reducing that climate impact that they have. Now, within their corporate procurement strategy, as you can see again on the scheme on the screen there, it feels like Durham's at the beginning of their sort of environmental aspect. I think again, what a few of the councils in the Northeast are grappling with is they've got really big ambitions around delivering that climate emergency and delivering the net zero ambitions. It's then how do we get it embedded so that it delivers an outcome. It's not just an output. So again, you can hit the target but miss the point on a lot of this work. So it's how do we get that so that it's embedded properly, and again, celebrating those successes.
1 minute left, Simon.
Right, I'll be very quick. This is my last case study. So the second and my last case study is around the NHS Newcastle Foundation Trust. As again, they were the first NHS trust to declare a climate emergency in the country. They've got hugely ambitious plans to deliver on the environmental challenges. As you can see there on the right-hand side, it lists out the goals around zero carbon care, clean air, zero waste. And interestingly, what they've also said, just like the national government, is that they won't allow any suppliers that don't meet their standards or won't be achieving that net zero ambitions, won't be able to pitch for any of their future contracts. And with that, I will finish.